Next, I had the honor of meeting our presiding bishop when I attended the gathering of the vice presidents out in Chicago a few years back. And since that time, I regarded her as a rock star, a Lutheran rock star for sure. She keeps us and our denomination grounded in our faith. She is a master at holding the tension, both in our daily lives and on stage, especially at churchwide assembly. And I think her love for all of us is very real. In fact, she's as real as you can get. And even more so because we have the honor of having her right here with us today. What a joy it is for me to present to you our presiding bishop, Reverend Elizabeth Eaton.
Woo.
They put me up to this. Thank you, Kristen. Thank you, Bishop DeForest. Greetings to Northeastern Pennsylvania Synod. It's good to be back into the Eastern time zone. I've been living in Chicago, and that's the Central time zone, and I always feel like it's a made-up time zone. So I'm glad to be back in my own time zone once again. It's wonderful to be with you. This is the first time that I have visited this synod. Regrettably, I was supposed to be here when?
Oh gosh, for the first December?
December, that's right, correct. So, but you know, there's a pandemic and other things were going on, so I couldn't make it then. But I'm glad to be here now, and I'm very excited about this initiative that you and your bishop have worked on, growing young and vital in the Northeastern Pennsylvania Synod. And I was so relieved that we got it right at the churchwide organization as we've implemented a design trying to do just that, to be faithful to the gospel, but at the same time find ways, or I should say, and at the same time find ways to connect with new, young, and diverse people. As we heard in the last video, the pastor walked around his neighborhood trying to see if the congregation reflected the neighborhood, and it doesn't in a lot of cases, and that's not unusual, but now I think it's time for us to pay attention to that. We have been in existence, it'll be 35 years in 2022 as the ELCA, so we're like 30-something now. Past our adolescent years, settling into the 30-something, I guess we're sort of what, a millennial church that would qualify us as. But the world is growing younger and Gen Z. How then do we engage generations of people we don't know or who have not arrived yet? We've done a really excellent job in engaging folks who have been Lutheran for life, for those who've come more recently, but how do we engage those folks who don't even know they need Jesus, or the Jesus they think they know is not the Jesus of the Gospels? So we embarked on a process which began actually before the pandemic of saying, how can we position ourselves, and not just the churchwide organization, but all of us throughout the church, to be a radically relevant church rooted in tradition, to reach people who need to know the freedom that we have in Christ, the grace that we have received without merit or without effort, that's just a free gift, and that we are now free to serve the neighbor. So we started this process, and we took a look at some trend lines, which I had one fellow say to me, well, we would say in the corporate world that these are not favorable trend lines. So it's clear if we do nothing, we're not going to reach those folks. Now, let me say first, if the Lord believes and needs an ELCA witness to the gospel, nothing is going to stop us. But if in fact we are not effective at that, there's nothing that can save us, no program. So how do we really engage with our understanding and our witness to the gospel, being true to that, but at the same time stretching ourselves to reach out to folks who are new, young, and diverse, which is something that you've been working on in the synod for since the before time. No, I think during the pandemic. Bishop DeForest is one of our few bishops who served his entire term so far during a pandemic. And we're just going to tell you it's a lot easier after a pandemic. No, it's just different. Okay. All right, so we took a look at the trend lines and are saying that we are growing older and less diverse. When we were at the Constituting Assembly in '88, we said that '87, we said that, yes, we wanted to have 20% of our membership be people who are people of color or primary language other than English, and that was brought down on the assembly floor to 10%. Well, we're about 6% people of color, primary language other than English, and we don't mean German or Norwegian or Slovak or et cetera. So clearly we've got work to do because the demographics in the United States are radically changing. And by the middle of this century, it's very likely that there will not be any one group that's a majority. White people might have a plurality, but we won't be the majority. And the country is also growing younger. So we have to reach these people with the good news of Jesus. So working on this and on previous work that we've done, we came up with the vision, which we had carried over from Future Directions 2025. And here is the vision. We have a vision of a world experiencing the difference God's grace and love in Christ makes for all people and creation, which covers a number of the points that you've raised during this assembly. And we have a purpose, very clearly stated purpose. You know, I think we would have a purpose, but we never could explain that to anyone. So now we want the Spirit to activate each of us, so more people know the way of Jesus and discover community, justice, and love. It's not my job. I certainly can't do it by myself. It's not your bishop's job. It's not the synod staff's job. It's not even one congregation's job. It's all of us together, engaging more folks so that they might know the way of Jesus, which we believe is the way of freedom and life and reconciliation and grace, and discover community, justice, and love. You had a very compelling video earlier today about a woman who felt alone, estranged, abandoned. Those are some of the people we want to reach to say, no, you are not alone. We want to invite you and welcome you into this community. And then we have 3 priorities, which we carried over from Future Directions 2025. This is shorthand. We want to be a welcoming church, engaging new, young, and diverse people. Now, every one of us who's been a member of this church for the last 6 or 7 decades, let's just all take a breath, okay? I have been hearing consistently, since I was a synod bishop, tell us how we can get more youth and young adults into our pews. Has that not been, have you heard that already, Bishop DeForest?
Yeah.
Have you, have you heard it, Secretary Carl? Yes, we have, over and over, and get new youth and young adults. I've always asked the question, why do you want youth and young adults as members of the church? And the answers are things like, well, they're the future, or they have energy, or, we really need, no, those are all horrible reasons to invite someone. The good reason to invite someone is that they might know the intimate love of Jesus that Jesus has for every one of us. And since this has been something we've been asking for nearly 35 years, we're going to work on it. Those of us who are already here are going to do everything that we can to contact and engage new, young, and diverse people, people who aren't with us yet, people who don't look like most of us right now, in order to fulfill the vision that we see in Revelation chapter 7 of all nations, languages, tribes streaming to the throne. So we've answered your question, we're answering your prayer, and you are the ones who are going to help us to do this. The second is a thriving church rooted in tradition and radically relevant. You have 4 companions, which is stunning to me. I had one when I was in northeastern Ohio and could barely keep up. But in fact, you have these 4 companions. And we heard about the numbers of Lutherans there are around the world. Most Lutherans in the Lutheran World Federation are people of color, usually Asian or African descent people in sub-Saharan Africa and Asia, and they're younger than we are, and many of them, as I, have never really tasted lefse, or whatever it is that happens to be. My folks my people on my mother's side are German. So the tradition that we're rooted in has nothing to do with culture or cuisine, which is not to deny those things that are precious to us. But if we are going to insist that people become like us in order to become part of the ELCA, we're missing the point entirely. So the tradition, and I'm urging all of you in this synod, hopefully you'll take the lead, get out your small catechism again. We tried this in 2017, and now we think we're done. We can check that off. Get out your small catechism. And there are other resources. For example, there is an African descent contemplation commentary on Luther's small catechism. We are in the process now of developing one, Reflections by American Indians, Alaskan, and Hawaiian Natives about the small catechism. And in fact, there's also an Asian and Pacific Islander reflections on the small catechism. It's not simply a white European thing. This is foundational to us. And one thing I can guarantee you, the question that is asked most around the world in every language is, what does this mean? Everyone's reading the small catechism out there. We need to ball it out too. So that's the tradition. But how can we be radically relevant? How do we connect with people? One of the difficult things is how do we, some of us, get out of the way and not insist on our way when we're trying to meet these people who are also created in the image of God and do, in fact, want to have this relationship with a personal, intimate, loving relationship with the Savior. And we want to be a connected and sustainable church. So thank you for the generosity of this synod and your tradition of that. But we want to be connected throughout the church. When I was first elected presiding bishop, I would say we have to remember that we're church, that we're Lutheran, that we're church together, and church for the sake of the world. The church together part we're not so good at. I was meeting with one of the pastors here just a little bit ago, and he said he was trying to explain the three expressions of the church to his young daughter. And I said the doctrine of the Trinity might be easier to understand, in fact, than our polity. But we've missed out on this. No one congregation by itself can take care of all of the needs of the world, nor speak the word of the gospel to the entire church. We depend on each other. And no church-wide organization can meet the needs or speak the word in context of the gospel where all of our congregations, agencies, institutions, colleges, universities, seminaries, etc., are planted. We need every single one of us. All right, so those are the three priorities that we're working at, and I want to go a little bit deeper than this. I realized pretty early on that there's the world, and then there's church world, and that the church should never somehow stray into borrowing language from the corporate world or other parts of the world because that just wasn't holy and faithful enough. So in many cases, we would just sort of think, nice thoughts, and being poets and philosophers, we wouldn't use some of the best practices that other institutions and agencies in this country, in this culture, have developed. One of the things we're not really good at is metrics. Now, I don't know about your synod, Bishop DeForest, and I'm sure it's true that every single pastor and deacon and congregation has turned in its congregational report. Oh, not so much?
Not so much.
Yeah, you're not being church together if you're not turning in your congregational report. And actually, the Northern Great Lakes Synod, once again this year, has 100% success rate in people turning in. We need to know what's going on in our parishes. We need you to tell us. All right, so that's part of what we're doing. But now, metrics. Metrics are not always things that we use in the church. We just sort of hope for things, but there's nothing wrong with metrics. In fact, I don't think Jesus ever told a parable about church, but Jesus told a lot of parables about business. And one of the metrics he said to make sure of is if you're going to build a barn, make sure you've got everything, or a tower, make sure you have everything you need before you start. There's nothing wrong with that. So we have determined and are excited about calling the entire church, all of us together, into this goal to engage 1 million new people by the end of this decade. 1 million new people. Now, we hope we can engage and retain some of those folks, but this is our chance, all of us together. And most importantly, this will have to happen from congregations because you're planted in neighborhoods. You're where the people are. It's like when a gangster asked, why did you rob banks? He said, that's where the money is. Well, we need you because that's where the people are. You are in your communities. But we can't do this alone. 1 in 50 Americans, 50, is touched by Lutheran services in America. there's another touch point that we can't have with people. So we'll be developing objectives and key results, OKRs. I've learned this language. I was a music major, so this is a new thing for me, to help us engage these folks so that they might know this wonderful, freeing life that we have and the true joy that we have in the gospel. Let me just say very quickly, joy and happiness are two different things. And I think happiness in some ways is overrated. But joy is eternal and powerful and strong, and the joy that we have in Jesus is something that can change the world. So, those are some of the things that we're looking at, and they line up exactly with your vital signs, healing the hurt. We know, especially after this pandemic, that revealed not only inequities in our healthcare system, but also racial and economic inequities, that there's a lot of hurt out there. And all of us, I think we sort of sailed through this as if we weren't living in a pandemic. All of us have some hurt to heal. We need to love the land, and I would acknowledge that we are meeting on the ancestral lands of the Delaware, Susquehannock, Shawnee, and Iroquois. And that this land is the only land, this planet's the only planet we have right now. I mean, sure, we might wait till it go to Mars, but that's going to take a while. We have to love the land. And if you read the creation account in Genesis, God first calls the creation before the human beings very good. So that's something we have to understand. We need to engage the stranger. And we engage the stranger not by trying to make them like us, or not to try to do things to them, but find them where are these people? What are their lives now? What keeps them up at night? What gives them joy? And how then can we connect their story to Jesus' story? So I'm excited about this new endeavor. I'm thrilled that this synod is already working on all of these things. There'll be more information coming to your bishop and to others, because we need every single one of us to be part of this great mission of engaging 1 million new people, that they might know the way of Jesus and encounter community, justice, and love. So thank you, Bishop DeForest. Thank you, Kristen.
Thank you, Elbow. I
That's
guess. Thank you so much. Presiding Bishop, yes, I'm going to move in on the same podium. You can take your computer. Thank you. Oh, as I break it.
You did.
Thank you so much. You know, one of the things, before you run off, and I only want to take a second here. Thank you for being here. But also, I think the challenge that you set up for us when you describe all these things is that Churchwide can help us vision and set some priorities, but we can lead too.
Oh, yes.
And you all listen to us because we're all this together. So there's things that we can try and experiment and work on, and there's money and resources and prayer and power that we can start and gift the whole church on. And so I guess I'm hearing this reciprocal opportunity, this mutuality, this holy partnership that we have together. And so I thank you for being here and accenting that. And as we hear this similar thing, it's fun to watch the few people we have gathered around the room going, yes, oh, love that part. If you feel something else that you want to actively be a part of, let us know. Let's make those connections and let's make that happen. So did you want to?
No, thank you, Bishop DeForest, for highlighting this. That's exactly right. We've often and too long have operated in a siloed configuration. And I know this is jargon, but we are trying to flatten the organization so that, in fact, we need to learn from synods and from congregations. We believe in collective genius, and that a good idea can come from anywhere, and not just from us. And we will support the work, but also learn from you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Wonderful.
Sure.
That's great. If we were a huge crowd, I would love to hear the roar of the crowd. So I'm hearing the roar of the Zoom. Okay.